Again, it's that time of the week. There may be some puppies wrestling in the background, so please ignore that.
Sure,
But
people will want to watch that more
yeah.
than us
Oh,
anyway.
100%. Yeah, if we would just replaced our video with like a live feed of the
Yeah.
puppies playing, then yeah, that would probably do way better. Um, but it is that time again, that time of the week where we are going to be doing Geek Speak. And the topic today is we're going to be talking about how to pick the right keyword for your page. So, kind of what goes into it, and we kind of how that affects your website and ways to think about it. And of course, my name is Phelan. I work at Seymour Digital Media, where we focus on search engine marketing.
And I'm Greg with the Original 72 Creative, and we do full websites, digital marketing, all in Vancouver area.
Nice, nice. Okay. Looks like we are live. That part. Just confirm
Yes,
that
I
part.
saw the notification, so we
Yeah,
should
yeah.
be good.
Awesome. Yeah, and let us know if the audio isn't working or all the levels on our side look like they're doing fine. Um, okay, so I guess the first thing to kind of that you and I, when we were talking about it, is the starting off point is picking the right keywords for your website. It doesn't matter if you're starting with a brand new website or an existing one. Uh, in fact, if you're starting with an existing site, like doing a content audit and consolidating down pages is probably going to be good for your site, especially if it's, you know, I don't know about you, Greg, but any site, in my experience, like older than 2 years, has a lot of just buildup of just stuff that's been done, plugins that probably need to be deleted, pages that aren't doing anything, just, you know, needs to be maintained like a garden.
Yeah,
Yeah. And so,
that's a good analogy, actually. Maintain like a garden.
yeah, I
Might,
just
might
thought
start
of that. So,
might start
yes.
throwing that in when I talk to clients.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, because I mean, like, especially if you've brought in like different gardeners as like marketers or website people, and they've done stuff, but no one really knows what everyone's done, and they're not coordinating it. At some point, stopping everything and just going, okay, we need to fix everything is going to be really good and really useful for your website.
And eventually, if you do something somewhere and leave it, maybe it turns into weeds, which you then need to clean out and
Yeah.
fix.
Yeah. We've definitely run into that where people have like 100 pages that are just like no traffic. It's just they are doing nothing for your website. So,
Mm.
keeping that metaphor, you're going to prune off a bunch of it and get it back to a healthy state where you've got a really lean website. Um, so that was kind of when we were talking about this in the prep that Google is moving towards one big long page is what their preference is. Um, and there's a material reason for it is because one big long page is easier to load than a dozen smaller pages, right? Because then you have to wait
Hmm.
for all the data to come in, and like they're limited in how many URLs they can scan in a day, and so they're
Hmm. Hmm.
the fewer, and it just has like properly structured with a nice H1, H2 sort of the topic of like that section. And if you have it nice and structured, Google's going to really appreciate that because you're making it easy for them to just scan the page and they're done, and then they know how that all connects.
And just so people know, because that was something that for the longest time with clients, I was saying like the more pages we could get, the more chance the more pages we have that we can optimize. Now, what you're saying is they like the longer page now, but that still is like single topic page, not having a single page that has like all of your content with multiple topics. You still
Yeah.
want to split out your pages to multiple pages for whatever that relevant page information is, but more keep it on a single page as opposed to splitting that same content up into maybe two or three pages.
Yeah, exactly. So it's you kind of want to think of it as like easiest way that I would say to get started thinking about this is what is the service that you offer. Usually, you have a couple different variations on a service, but if I'm a plumber, I could have emergency repair, or emergency plumbing repairs. I could have commercial, right? A big commercial project. I could have residential. So that's already splitting it out into three different distinct types that are going to have their own headings and questions that are related to those parts. So that's one way that Google can kind of recognize how that's going, and just think of it as kind of like your big broad one, and then it's got like its own, like if you were to have made a 300 word blog post, now that would just be kind of incorporated into the page as something
Mm-hmm.
of like,
Mm-hmm.
what can I expect from the emergency, and then you would have like listed out those parts. Well, now it's just integrated into one big long page.
Yeah. I think a good example that I'm just thinking of now would be that if you have, in the past, sometimes you've done a page about some type of service or product or whatever, and you might have had a link to FAQs about that service, product, or what have you. And instead of having that FAQs on a single page, keep those FAQs on the same page so that so you get that additional content all on that one page as opposed to having that separate page. Is that a good analogy of what you feel is better to these days for SEO?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, definitely for that. Just having it more kind of encompass every aspect of it. Like you said, the FAQs, if you had them on their own separate page, if they're about like that specific service, like there's no like that's a perfect time to integrate those ones into it, because Google really appreciates those parts because it kind of adds more context for that one page, and you're getting all the juice that you can get out of like all the different aspects that you're thinking of, like that one header, that one main service that you're offering. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's definitely a good way to do it. um, and you do want to just plan this out where not even really complicated as well, just like a simple spreadsheet of just grab every URL and figuring out like, oh, these are all of the same kind of topic, or they all relate to this one service, and then you go through your website, and you could just have a nice long list. And you can also, if you've got Google Analytics, you see like, oh, this page is getting no traffic, like perfect page to get rid of, right? Because it's also just the bloat of your own website. Because if Google's not even ranking the page, like there's no point in keeping it. It's just literally going to be dead weight because they're obviously not ranking it now. So
Unless it's a page full of content that you are wanting to get ranked, then you have another issue in, okay, why isn't this ranking? What do
yeah,
I need to do to get this content, which I need on my site, more out there in Google and found?
yeah. Oh, yeah. What I was saying is like, it's more. I always think of it more as consolidation. I'm not a big fan of just like delete the page. I'm
Mm,
more of a fan of like, oh, these ones all kind of cover this topic. Hey, what if we combined all these together and then make it
yeah.
into one really long page that covers all the different aspects of it, right? Because that's going to also give more juice to it, because Google's going to be like, oh, they're building like, um, you know, the ultimate guide for journaling. And so it's like ultimate beginner's guide for journaling, rather than having like these little disparate parts. You just integrate them all into one page, and so
Mhm.
that's easier for Google to rank because it understands it a lot better as well.
Awesome. So, did we want to get into any aspects of actually choosing the right keywords before going into our strategies of implementing the
Yeah, let's.
keywords and on your page for best results?
Yeah, so it's definitely one where you want something that's, um, generally, you want it to be a bit descriptive, as like not like a full long tail keyword like what is the best bike for under $500. Like that's not going to be the header, but it might be something like, a general, what's the best bike to buy in 2022. Like
Mm-hmm.
that would be like the topic, and then it would go into what's the best bike. So it's different aspects of the what are the best bikes to buy. You can compare them by price. You can then compare them by quality, compare them by like all these different aspects that would be related to the best bikes for to buy in 2022, but it's not, um, but it's more detailed. And so that
Mm-hmm.
way you want it to be, find that middle ground between it being like a really vague head term where it's like best bike to buy, or best, yeah, like buying a bike. That's way too broad. You want something a little more detailed to that, but not super detailed. It's that little
Yeah.
balancing act. Um,
And so, do you go about choosing keywords for pages based on more what the page is, or when you come up with that heading or title that hopefully will grab people, and then decide what your keyword within that is going to be?
yeah, so it's definitely it's a bit of a, you know, there's no hard and fast like, oh, this is obviously. It will depend on if your website's existing versus like a new website, because then you have to like, because you don't have Search Console to give you some data on like, hey, we think this page is about this, because you do have to take in a little bit of account of what Google thinks the page is, because you might need to steer it that it's like, you know, it may think that this other keyword is better for the page, and so you're going to have to be like, no, I'm about this keyword, these sets of keywords, and so there's a little bit of a balancing act there.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, I find that you want to have a balance between you as the business owner or marketer. So if you know, like, say it's your client's website, you know generally like, oh, their business is about this, so they're probably going to want to rank for these type of keywords, and then you're going to want to compare that to what other people are already ranking for those. So you want to be doing some Google searches, see how they're ranking, and see if there's a keyword that. Sometimes Google also likes to just like auto replace, and like they're just like, yeah, anytime someone types in anything about like air duct cleaning, or no, duct cleaning services, they actually mean air duct cleaning services, and so you'll
Mm-hmm.
always see it just auto replace to that, of having air duct cleaning, and so
Yeah, I do think it's probably one of the most important things before you start any SEO is making sure you have all of the keywords or key phrases defined that you feel are relevant to your product or service, and do the research on the volumes of all of the ones that you've identified. Find the variations of the ones,
yeah,
create variations of what you think, and their volumes, and figure out what volumes you can get the best traction in before deciding which one you actually implement on your site.
yeah, and also like, I was just saying, just to and then test it, see what Google thinks is already like who's already ranking, right? Because that'll
Mhm.
also give you a little. If you just pop it into Google in an incognito browser, then you get a pretty good. You'll get you know, it's not going to be a perfect, but at least it will give you a guide, of going from this point. You know, these are the people that are already ranking for it, and these are the things they've kind of done to the page.
Mhm.
Then that gives you a really good opportunity to kind of test, to be like, oh, when I, you know, because sometimes you may think that you're explaining your service really well, but it turns out that like how people actually Google for your service might not match.
Oh yeah, for sure. I've had so many occasions where a customer's been like, "Yeah, I want to rank for this," and then you do the research on that, and it's not how people look for what he's or they are trying to you know sell.
Yeah,
So you go back to you can actually go back to the client and say, hey, listen, like I know you want to rank for this, but this is not how the people search for what we're trying to get out there. So it doesn't make sense.
yeah,
This is
or
how they do, and these are the volumes for that, and so this is the path where we're going to get the best traction, to get more traffic to your site.
exactly. Yeah, I totally would agree with that part. And one of the other ones that we do is like, say someone has like a way more technical term for what they would be selling. What we
Yeah.
do is we say like, oh, look, we're going to put the more generic kind of one that people Google as kind of the header one, so that, because that's how most people are. We will include like the kind of technical sounding one as one of the H2s, and
Hmm.
like have it as one of the sections of it. So that way, if someone does happen to like type in, you know, do you sell this exact thing, like, or do you integrate with this exact thing, they can find that on the page. And so, but that way you can, the client doesn't feel like you're just kind of pushing them aside. You can like go, oh no, we'll integrate that in. It's just this is the main way that people are looking for it, and we have to go after the volume.
Well, I think for the most part, they when you bring it up to them and you show them the volumes of those key phrases or keywords, they'll understand right away. Because I've never had a client where they see this information. It's more like eye opening um, than anything else. So, and I've never had pushback on like, no, I need to rank for this. They're all like, oh, that's really interesting. Like, obviously, we need to, change how we're optimizing. There is sometimes the situation where they just want to be known for the actual technical term for something. Um, and but also want to try to use that but optimize for the other, which is a difficult thing uh, to do right there. But because there are some businesses that, I mean, if that's what it's called, and it's known for some reason, but people don't search like that, there are those circumstances, which is kind of weird. But yeah, that's a different hurdle to get over, because
Yeah,
people want to call their service or product what it actually is, not by how people search for it. But you want to make sure you get found for how people search for it. So it's a difficult balancing act there.
yeah, I would agree with you that I mean, it's a fine line. There's no hard and fast rules. I will say we have had pushback before on picking keywords, so that was coming from experience. That one.
Okay.
So
I wasn't saying it doesn't happen, but
oh
for the
yeah,
most part, when you show them, I mean,
yeah,
most of these business people are not, stupid, right? You show them the information,
yeah,
and you're like, oh, that makes sense. Like, if we want more traffic, we need to optimize with the different term.
yeah.
You don't come across very often
No.
those stubborn people who are like, no, that's the word. Use that. I don't care.
Yeah, yeah. It's and those are ones that we generally didn't keep working with as well, because generally those are red flags of indicating other issues that you're probably going to have with them, and so
True, true enough.
yeah, so they were definitely not long lasting clients for that part, because they're like if you're fighting if you're fighting with your client about how to get the work done, generally it's not a good sign of like they're of a good working relationship. I was just giving advice if you do run into that situation that
Yeah.
you'd get that. So yeah, I guess now that you've done all the keyword research, and now we're going to be moving over to the implementation of it, which is I will say it is not complicated. It's just a lot of work. Like that's the big thing about it, is like it's not like the act of it isn't really hard. It's just there's a lot of URLs, a lot of content that needs to be rewritten, needs to be
Yeah.
restructured. And again, this is
and,
where
and
you're
different importance on all of them as well, because you do also get in the case where sometimes you maybe don't want to change the URL, or don't want to change the header, or don't want to change some link text or something like that. So, but as much as possible in the implementation of your keywords, you want to put it in all of the available places that you can do, which there's a lot, and it's quite a task to make those changes.
yeah. Oh yes, it's absolutely there is some growling dogs behind me, and I want to
Well,
do something with them.
one of the things in our prep that I thought was interesting. I think you can probably relay the story, because it's obviously something we want to relay to people, was the challenge that you were talking about. That
Oh yeah.
Yeah, go
um
ahead and tell the story.
yeah, so this is an anecdotal story, but it comes from, I can't remember. He's a top kind of SEO guy that and he got his little acclaim to fame was that he got a Laurel Ipsum website to rank in like third or fourth place, but like just ahead of a competition. So they're like, it was a big SEO conference, and so they gave out a prize that if you could win this challenge, you would get like, I don't remember the exact details of what you would get, but what he had done is basically looked at it where he had structured it where I think he did the headings, page titles, meta descriptions, and then all the actual content was all Lorem Ipsum, except for the anchor text, that little bit of text that then links to another page. And then from that anchor text would link to the page. So Google really, like, that anchor text is super important, because to Google, if you just say learn more or buy now or read more, like that doesn't tell Google anything, or even the user, about if I click on this, where am I going to? But if you have it where it's like, learn more about writing or journaling in the morning, and that's a blog post about how to journal in the morning. And so that's a way that Google goes, oh, I bet that page is about that. And then when they go there, there's like, oh, the H1 actually talks about journaling in the morning. And like, so that way they know that, oh, okay, so this anchor text, and they make little nodes in the network, and they know, oh, this is connected here to there. And then Google, it makes it super easy for Google as well to know what these pages are. So it's definitely, yeah, because we were talking about it in the context of like the business owner, and it makes your life a lot easier where it's like, you can focus on these little wins of just making sure H1 has it, your page titles, your meta descriptions, and your anchor texts are all, and they have to be consistent. So if you have every time you link to that page, it has the exact same keywords in it. So it would be, or like another one would be like, read our ultimate guide on beginner journaling. And so like, and every time you reference it, it's ultimate guide on beginner journaling. And so that way, like, that's consistent, that always is going to be the same. And so that's where your spreadsheet comes in. So oh, this is the text we chose for it. So anytime we link to it, make sure to use that text.
Yeah, I found that really interesting, only because of the fact that I feel like for a long time there was so much importance put on your actual content and what you're saying and how you're saying it, and how many times you have the keyword in the content of the page. Whereas this example, he just used completely gibberish text. So there was no keywords, density within the actual content, other than using them in the H1s, H2s, and having that either anchor text or alt text on a button, I'm assuming, or do they?
I can't speak to the alt text. I just know that the anchor text, so like that little bit of text that then links to another page, that was where he put all his effort in, and really clearly, like, and I think it was a location and orthodontics. I think it was like Santa Monica Orthodontics or something like that. So it's something, as like a general business owner, it gives you a lot of hope to focus on that part of it, is structuring your website really well, so that Google, when they scan it, they know like, oh, okay, anyone in this area who's looking for orthodontics, this is a website I can show them.
So basically, it was just, I found it so interesting because of the fact that the content on the page, the way that he structured everything was so powerful that the content itself on the page, other than the H1s and H2s, was irrelevant to the results almost, because it was gibberish text.
Yeah. So, and I'm saying, so just to clarify as well, don't just ignore the text like this.
Yeah,
there's still needs to have users
it was more to show the example of how powerful the anchor text is on links, and the power of the H1s and H2s having that keyword in them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I wanted to clarify that it's like, doesn't mean don't like have text that is like human readable. Don't ignore that.
I'm not advocating an entire page of Lorem Ipsum text.
No. I'm just we're very clear about that part. Also, don't use any don't purely use like an AI writer as well, because that last update with Google was specifically targeting people who just blindly just were like, oh, I'm just going to do all AI writers. And Google now has the ability to reverse engineer if you just used a like, it's called a GPT-3 transformer. So it just does predictive text, they can
Yeah.
backwards engineer it so they could tell if you have used it or not. So also using that as a clarifier that
So, other than implementing our chosen keywords in those spots, H1s, H2s, anchors, some of the other common ones that you need to put in too are image names. Try to have your anchor text in your even in your image names that you use on the page,
yeah,
as well as the alt text on links, as well as images. Obviously, you mentioned earlier the URLs. If you can get your alt text into the URLs as well, any other major ones, and then the density on the
yeah.
page, trying to use it in there. Anything else that you think would really stand out as a major one to implement your keyword on?
Yeah, so if you've started consolidating those pages as well, one thing to be very mindful of is you want to set up the 3-1 redirects, because Google really doesn't like it if a link doesn't work, or if they thought a link was there and now it's not. But if you just have like a, it's like a little change address, like, when you forward your mail and to Google, you're just saying, okay, it used to be here and now it's actually here. And then that way, also if you have backlinks or anything like that, it keeps all that. So super important if you're going to just like get rid of a bunch of pages, that you have it point to where the new ones are. Or if you haven't, if you're just like getting rid of them, totally, if that's a viable option as well, I would redirect to the homepage. And there's plugins in WordPress that will just automatically, if you don't set the 301 redirect to a specific page, they just do it to the homepage. So
Yeah.
it's definitely that's super important, because the one thing Google really hates is a 404. Like, they very much 500s and 404s. If you
What if it's a fun custom 404? They don't like
uh,
that.
no, well, no, not like the GitHub one, which is that is the best 404 page out there, is the GitHub one. And well, or I was trying to think, what is it? It's 418, I believe, is the so there's, because British people were the first ones to have set this up, that all the HTTP 418 is I am a teacup. So if you send that to a server, it'll spit back I am a teacup.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I don't think I knew that.
Just a
20,
weird.
20 plus years, you'd think I might know that one.
It's not one that people are very common. Like, I just know it because like I was reading through all the status codes, and it's just one that shows up.
Yeah.
And it's definitely one of the weirder ones. Just like the fact you've never had a 402, and that was supposed to be because 402 is payment was not successful. But they, when they originally were writing the status codes, they thought banks would be okay with the internet and sharing money, and the banks were like, "No, we are not," and so they never got to implement it. But that's what a 402 was supposed to be.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
All right.
it does look like we are rounding up on our time. So it's definitely, if you guys do have questions about anything with the, the structured, how to be structured with keywords or anything like that, leave us a comment in the live. And most of our questions that we're answering are going to be in the Cyberpunk Marketing Mixer. So if you haven't joined, definitely join us there. And you can join our awesome community and help out or ask questions. And we're always there to see what you're doing and help you out where we can.
It's the place to be.
Yes, the place to be.
And
so I'm just looking quickly. What do we have coming up?
Oh yeah, you'd think I would have had that ready,
Looks like we are going to be, it is Pip and I doing what is advanced SEO. And so this has been a fun little preview, because actually some of the parts that we talked about here today are definitely going to be in there. So yeah, once again, my name is Phelan.
And I'm Greg. Thanks for joining us again.
Yeah, we look forward to seeing you guys and the group. And
nobody really turns in for the two guys, do they? They was tuned in for the ladies.
All right, we'll leave it on that note then. Okay, bye.